Hello everybody and welcome to the TT podcast. This is part 2 with Dave Molyneux, and we left it still, where were we? 80s, I think we've just been discussing the 80s.
Oh, we moved into the mid-90s with the Ulster Grand Prix.
Right, okay. Yeah. So we literally, in that tiny little break that we've had, if you've not listened to part 1, make sure you go back and listen to it. But we just started discussing then, because I saw you at the TT, and we were having a chat about, it had just started raining, so they called off the session, this is TT 2022, for the solos. And you looked at me and you said, I'd go out in this. I'd still be out in this. And then you started discussing some of the old times. Yeah. Not that long ago, to be fair, when you were out in the rain. So, please tell us the story. 2003. Sheet of ice.
It was.
It looked like a sheet of ice.
Well, Prince William was over visiting, and he had a small window of time, which just happened to be the sidecar race. So he was down at Bradden Bridge, and Clerk the course said, "Look, guys, we've got to go. You've got to go. Choose whatever ties you're going to go on. You've got to go." And it was raining. So I'm number one, and I'm thinking, that moment you were saying about the tap on the shoulder moment, it was one of them moments I thought, for God's sake, of all the times we have to go off, and I've got to go like a scalded cat because I've got to win this race. Yeah. And off we went. And
hold on, sorry, Dave. What tyres did you pick? Because most people think it's wet. You went with wet tyres. Sorry,
slicks.
Of course you went with slicks.
I went with a slick,
Why?
A full race slick. Because, well, such a long circuit, and I thought it had forecast to dry up and get better. But anyway, so I was thinking I'll go slow through the wet bits, I'll go fast through the dry bits, and it was just play it like that. And that's one of the things I miss about that type of riding at the TT. Because it's all or nothing now. It's just full on, hardcore from word go. Yeah. The racecraft of being able to ride in the wet on a maybe not so suitable tyre has been taken off us, and the decision has been taken off us. And I would race in the wet all day long because I was brought up with it, and I look at it as part of the craft of being a good TT rider. You know, you got to deal with them different conditions. And in a very similar way, Steve, you must have remembered going out at Cadwell Park and going through the mountain in the damp or even wet, and then getting to the other side of the circuit in the dry. Oh yeah, it's only it's like a mini TT, has different elevations, and so 2003, Prince William's there. I didn't give him a wave. Off through first lap, wheel spinning, and got to Kirkmichael, and it was like it just was a different day. The sun was out, it was dry. Hammer went down, off like a scalded cat. Got to Ramsey, drizzle. Got to the mountain mile, fog. Off we're going, and it got worse. So I think my first lap was 108 mile an hour, something like that.
Still fast.
Second lap, 105. Third lap, 102. It just went down, down. And if you get the Duke video DVD of that year, you'll see just how dreadfully bad it was. Bikes were spinning off at Quarter Bridge and places like that. Just, wet weather tyre wouldn't last any more than a lap. And
so your passenger that year, was he of the same mentality, keep going? Or was
well,
he
you know who that passenger was. It was Craig Hallam, probably one of the best passengers ever in the world, but a raving lunatic, a complete raving lunatic.
That's who you need on the bike when it's raining like that.
But pot kettle back.
But seriously, that guy, probably one of the best passengers. He could steer the bike with you, especially in the wet. Yeah. Craig, he was a fantastic solo rider as well, and sidecar driver, and passenger. So we won the race, and that was that.
So how's a sidecar handling in those conditions on a slick? Does it handle?
Yeah,
or
it handles
is it
good.
literally just
it does handle
all the
good.
way around?
And once you do get a bit of warmth in the tyre, it's not half so bad. But Bob McMillan, who was in charge at Honda at that time, and David Dew went to Hilbury to watch that race, and they came back afterwards, and because I was riding with the Honda UK concern then, and they just said, that's the most mental thing I've ever heard. You come through there and it just wheel spun all the way out of sight, all the way up out of Hilbury, and it was very wet, but stable. And like I say, you learn that racecraft, and I look back and think you're crazy sod, but
that's the other thing. You are a highly skilled professional at that point. Like the guys further down the back of the pack, wouldn't it be too dangerous for them? Or
they there was about 50 of them in a group at the start line, just saying, Dave, can't you go and ask them? Eddie Nelson was the clock, of course.
Right, yeah.
I went to Eddie, I said, can we not just delay this for half an hour, see where we go? He said, Dave, we can't. Prince William's here and we've got to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, tell the boys back at the start line they can not ride if they don't want to ride. Nobody's got a gun to their head.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I goes back as like the elected riders rep and said, listen lads, this is what he said. I can only say to you, just take your time.
Yeah.
It's fine. It isn't as bad as it seems. And run a cut slick, run some cut slicks. Then.
Oh, it's fine.
And so off we went. But no accidents. Nobody got hurt in that race.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
But this is what I mean. When you have to remember when it's wet, that all these riders have been brought up on circuits where we go and ride in the wet, we go and ride in the dry, we ride in the damp, and that's an apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
And must admit, at that time, we had Southern 100 and there was a few other road races going that we rode in the wet. And you've just got to slow down and go with it.
Yeah.
You don't go faster in the wet, you go slower. So.
Yeah, I wonder how it would be now if they did it in the wet, if they allowed a TT to go in the wet, especially with the solos, those thousands.
Oh,
do you think
I
we'd
don't
still
think
see
that's acceptable.
No. But if they did, do you think we'd still see the riders who are good still at the top? Or would you like Michael Rutter, for instance, put him on a short circuit and he's phenomenal in the wet.
He is.
Do you think you'd see him beating Hickey in wet conditions around here?
Probably so. I think some riders have been more reserved than others for obvious reasons, but the difficult part, of course, is bikes are that powerful now. Is getting a tyre to last in those conditions and be safe with it.
Yeah, it needs to be wet all the way around, doesn't it? Otherwise, like Dave said,
I think like
but you still destroy a tyre, a wet tyre.
Do you think? Even if it was wet all the way around?
If it was heavy water all the way around, there's that much power. Yeah, it's well over 200 horsepower, you see, going through a tyre patch.
But like in the sidecar class now, we've got superb tyres, and I did a British Championship round in 2018 at Alton Park, and I was one of two riders on a 30 bikes that went out. It started to drizzle, and I put a set of wets in, and off we went out onto the grid. Did the warm-up lap, and I knew I'd made a mistake. I thought, nah, it's not going to last this. It's going to dry up, and within a lap, it was just a dry line all the way, and then within 3 laps it was bone dry. Mm-hmm. But I just kept plugging away and riding it sensible, not hammering the throttle, and came in third.
God, flipping out.
The back tyre was still in reasonable shape. God. That was a 15-lap race around Alton Park, going out at hammer and tongue. We still put in I think it was about the 4th quickest lap of the race, which was only a couple of seconds off the dry tyres. And it was just looking after them and wide lines and not being aggressive with the bike. So, maybe the modern tyre would last on the sidecar around the TT. I'm not sure, but
that'd be interesting.
It would just, in times of practice particularly, it would do the sidecars a great deal of good and favours, because we're just not getting enough laps in here anymore. We're not. Yeah.
So, you're widely known in general as a TT legend, right? Mm-hmm. What about short circuit? What about you've mentioned European Championships and going over and doing the British Championships like that, or what about World Championship?
Well, it goes back quite a long way. I did my first ever European Championship round in 1988 when I rode with Padgett, rode at Hockenheim and British Championship and all that, and I think I was actually...
Did it float your boat as much as, obviously, the TT course?
Well, earlier, I had this... My main ambition was that I'd love to be a world champion, that was the thing. Yeah. But then I won the TT in 1989, and I actually thought I was still the youngest driver to win to date, by 6 months from Jock Taylor, actually.
Cool.
And I thought right there and then, that moment, that's it. I'm not even bothered about being a top great road racer. I wanted to be world championship and try and get to the top. I was young, 25, and that was the main aim. But I kind of thought, sponsors should come pretty easy now and all that, because the Sidecar World Championship was a huge thing back then. It was big and a really good part of the 500 Grand Prix circuit, you know.
I was just going to say it was part of the Grand Prix series.
Yeah. And the solo guys back then, they appreciated what the likes of Rolf Billand and Steve Webster and all the greats of the past were putting in to the technology side of, like Billand developed a great V4 engine with Swiss Auto. And so there was a lot going on, and I wanted to be part of that, but I just couldn't raise the money. It was impossible. It was properly impossible. I dipped my toe in the water a few times and we were way out of our depth, but my first Grand Prix was off the back of a European Championship win at Schleiz in East Germany, and that was in 1996, and we got a wildcard ride literally on the podium. Wet race, won the race by a street, and the organiser Theo van Kempen came up with big wad of money, prize money, great in them days.
Cash in hand.
And all the trophies and the gear. And he said, right, you've got a wildcard ride at next weekend's Czech Grand Prix at Brno, but you've got to give me the answer now. And I just said yes. And then I thought, oh, shit, I've got to go back to the truck now where all the boys had already cracked the bottles and tell them. 7 guys on tour, 7 of us. I couldn't have afforded to go otherwise. They were all chipping in for diesel and tyres and the things you do, tolls on the motorway and all that sort of thing. And I walked in there soaking wet with the laurels and stuff, and they were there, cracked the beer bottles, and I said, boys, we've got a wildcard ride at next weekend's Czech Grand Prix at Brno, so if you want to go home, you're going to have to hitch a ride with some of the other lads. And they just all roared and cheered and said, no, we're off to Czechoslovakia, aren't we? Well, I'll tell you what, this was terrible. But we went in convoy with 2 other teams, I won't name them, off through Czechoslovakia, having a great time like you do. And me there with a big wad of money, burning a hole in my pocket. Yeah, we'll get beers here and fun here. And we got to Prague, spent 2 nights there. And then on Thursday, we headed off to Brno circuit. So we get there and just had time of our lives. But on the way, I think it was the Wednesday, it was a Wednesday. We're in the truck driving along, and all 7 of us laughing and joking about whatever had gone on. And I said to the boys, has anybody rang home? We're supposed to be back in the Isle of Man tonight off the ferry, and we're in Czechoslovakia. Well, no, haven't rang home. There was no mobile phones. We had no mobile phones. We're all married. So, we better stop at call box. So we get the change out, gathered up, and right, you can have this much. And glink, glink, and oh, hi, yeah. Are you at Haitian Port? No, I'm in Czechoslovakia. What are you doing in Czechoslovakia? I'm going to race at the Czech Grand Prix because we won at Germany and got a wild card. And my money's ran out.
That was it.
Hung up. Well, can you imagine when I got home?
Oh, yeah.
But so off we went to the Grand Prix, and I'm like stars in their eyes, proper job with Billand and Goodall and Claffey and Webster and all Dixon. Fantastic. And I finished 6th.
God,
first Grand Prix, and we finished 6th. Again, pouring with rain, but I found myself Dyson with Paul and Charlie Goodall, who were huge. They were actually the only ones at that point in the year that could have challenged Dixon for the world title.
Yeah.
There was a couple of points in it, but he made a wrong tyre choice. I was on full wets. Most of them were on inters or a mix. And I think Dixon came in 4th or something like that. Abbott was 5th and I was 6th. And I actually was too scared to pass Goodall at the start of the race. I was sat behind him in 9th place. And I was going, come on, gee up, boy. And anyway, I had to go past him. I went past him and off I went. I reckon I would have got a podium if I hadn't wasted 3 laps.
Yeah.
Being a gentleman because of the situation with his... But anyway, that was that. He lost the world championship. Dixon won.
So from there, how do we go back to the TT then?
Well,
did you not get enough rides in the Grand Prix?
Well, at the end of 1996, GPs cut the sidecars out, and then they were in no man's land for a couple of years until World Superbike took them on full time in 2000.
Super Slide, was it? Was it called
Super Slide? Yeah, with the introduction of 1200cc 4-stroke engines. So, yeah, I had a go at it then. Honda supported me with Blackbird engines, but they were just a bit soft. They didn't like being tuned, and I had some good results, top 6 several times at big circuits like Hockenheim. Places like that. Yeah. And I was competitive. I could front row qualify every now and again, and led a couple of races, but just couldn't string it together really financially. And I did have another go in 2007, but off the back of a huge accident at the TT the previous year. And I wasn't fit for 2 years really to be competitive. So yeah, that was it. I gave up on the World Championship thing then, and any dreams of success in that, because I felt my age was getting on top of me at about that time, 2007, and the injury I had to my shoulder was a bit of a rot. I had to have operation on it, all sorts of things, and I was just never fit enough to ride that style of bike.
This is from your 2006 TT crash, Cullen,
yeah.
And what was the injury?
I dislocated the shoulder, but broke it in 3 places, the joint, and although the dislocation was put back in, I had to be put under to get it in because it was that tightened up, and it's 4 hours after it sat.
I've heard how tight you are.
Oh, tight, yeah. Hang on. And after a few weeks of physio on that, it was just not playing ball, obviously, and I was being a bit anxious with it, trying to get in there.
Rushing it.
And Isla Scott from Scott Physio, she said, you're going to have to go and see a specialist on this, definitely. So I went to Manchester to the Sports Injury Clinic. He didn't really want to do it, but cut long story short, I talked him into it and gave him a TT DVD and said, it's important, I've got to make TT next year, watch it. Anyway, I got a phone call from his secretary saying, right, we can get you in on Saturday. So that was a week after the consultation. Got the job done. Still off work 8 months later, couldn't even hold a welding torch. It was that shaky and that. But I managed to get a bike together, built it, and won both races at TT. So, but completely different riding style and different racecraft. So to World Championship. So I was still reasonably competitive at TT. I possibly shouldn't have won both from races because Nick Crowe was going extremely strong then, but his bike failed and let him down, and I picked up pieces and won. But
you got to be in it to win it.
Got to be in it to win it. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Let's fast forward to because the one thing with sidecars is it's all off your own bike, right? When it comes to the manufacturers, there's no support. You're doing it all on your own, right?
Yeah, it used to be good.
Yeah.
Honda were brilliant, absolutely fantastic as a sponsor, and likes of Bob McMillan at the helm, he would say, you're on a level playing field here, Dave. Don't think Joey Dunlop will get any better treatment than you. If you need it, ask for it. Don't sit in a box. You say, ask for it, and you'll get it. And they were great days. But in the more these times now, that's a little bit rare. Yeah.
But so, like I said in the intro as well, 16 of your 17 wins have come on your own chassis. You're building your own things. You're putting, you're taking someone's engine and you're putting it in your own thing. Now, this year's TT, you brought an animal. You brought a. I don't know if you class it as a mongrel or a pedigree or what, but
just something weird.
It was certainly weird, but it sounded bloody fantastic. So, for people that weren't at the TT or might not have heard the story about it, explain to us exactly what you did with the new rule changes for this year and what you brought along.
Right, well, I used an 890 KTM Duke engine, which is a parallel twin, ideal configuration for a sidecar. The sump system is exceptional. It's what's called a dry sump system, but it's self-contained in the engine, so you haven't got external oil tanks or things like that. It was just fabulous, straight out of the road bike, straight in the sidecar. No major modifications and no tuning, but that I just felt like before, I don't know when I'll quit, but before I do, I just thought, let's try and put something in that can help class survive, because it is struggling. It's a struggle now. The things are expensive.
Because of the financial
side of things,
racing, yeah.
And I'm not seeing many young fellas. It's great that young Crow lads are going to great, and Pete Founds, there's some great new talent, but not enough of it, in my view. And I think there's plenty of people still wanting to do it, but just can't find a way in.
Yeah.
A set of tyres is £1,000 a time now.
Wow.
Everything's gone up at the shops, everything's gone up at the fuel station, everything's gone up for all of us. But to ride a bike is no different. Race a bike at the TT, the cost is soared. And in the solo class too, obviously. But I just felt like, we just spoke about great success, and I thought I'd rather sit back for a bit and just try and put something out there. And I got a bit of a beaten up for it a few years ago when I first mentioned it, and then called crazy for even thinking about the idea. But I thought somebody's got to do something.
Yeah.
It's going to drop.
Were you behind the rule change?
Yeah.
Was it your idea?
Of course, yeah, Steve. I mean, I pushed hard for it, and I think I must have sold it off pretty good, because it wasn't for any personal gain. Absolutely not. I just want to see the class, evolve as well.
Yeah.
Classes throughout the decades, have always changed. They've gone from everything to twin cylinder to 4-cylinder to 3-cylinder to all the 60s, 70s eras, and it shouldn't be any different here. We've been gifted that 600cc engine for the last 30 years, and it's served us well, but it's become more and more difficult. And I really want to see Birchells or the Crows or Pete Founds or somebody achieve that first 120 mile an hour lap. But I feel that's a different side of the sport. If you've got 100 grand in back and coming in to support that, fantastic, and deservedly so if you can achieve them goals. But we need something as a base to make it cheaper these guys for the future, to keep it going. And I've never had so much fun riding a bike. It's ideal, it's perfect. And if I can put it around at 114 mile an hour almost, I'm sure I could have got it round a bit quicker if I'd have pulled my finger out. But it wouldn't have made any difference to the results, Steve. So I was TT riding. I was riding to what my boards were telling me. I had a safe cushion back to fourth in both races, back to fifth, I mean. And so I felt like I achieved something really well this year by getting it to finish, because the odds were on and people were betting against it that it wouldn't even last. But it did. And
it must be really difficult as well, developing anything, because it's so hard to find anywhere to test, like a TT course.
Exactly. I mean, I rode that bike for 14 months from the first time of putting the engine in, 14 months of riding with not one single mechanical failure, other than couple of electrical faults, which led on to like a bit of detonation. An injector failed and starved the fuel and caused detonation, and that was the only real mechanical faults, which were self-created. I caused that. It wasn't the fault of the actual mechanics of the engine. But I got to the TT and had my first. It started overheating. I get to Ramsey, it would overheat. So quick fix. Fit an oil cooler. I hadn't needed that oil cooler through all of that 14 months of riding. Great reliability. But got as far as Ramsey, and it was cooking. So, but I fitted that, fixed, instant. And it was just pleasure to ride after that, and actually a lot of fun. And even when Pete Founds caught me at Cronkivody, he'd said, I didn't just fly past you, Dave. He said, it was quite a struggle to hang on to it. It shoots out the corners. And it was good fun talking like that. It wasn't anything embarrassing. It was actually damn good thing.
If there was a chance of like we said earlier, you've got to be in it to win it. But with the Birchells being the Birchells and doing what they're doing and being so dominant, if they weren't there, or they were clearly beatable, do you think you would have not done that this year and looked for more wins?
No.
You would have still gone down this route?
I'd have still gone down this route.
Yeah.
Another win is not going to change my life. It's not going to make any difference. I never really take much notice of statistics or anything like that. Although I'm a big fan of the TT and I like, John McGuinness's statistics and everybody else's and Joey's, and it's great. But I don't look, personally, I'm not looking at it like that. I get more pleasure from, like, I felt like I achieved something there. If I come in and won on my 600 and the same old thing that I've done before, I don't want to sound horribly or ungrateful for the sport, but when you have won quite a lot, it gets samey, and other people get a bit bored of it. I went through a stage there of being booed at the stage and stuff like that. In the early 2000s, people got really hacked off that we were still winning.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy. It was really hard. But
I don't think that's Dave Molyneux, though. That's domination.
It is.
It's Johnny Ray.
Yeah. Oh,
and so on.
Yeah.
Multiple world champion and so on. But
after a while, you get a bit kind of, why'd you even bother? And but I bother because I like riding, and that's all. And it's been good. It's been.
Going back to, Chris asked you a question in part one about trying to wind you up and find out a bit of dirt, and it was the worst passenger.
We didn't get enough.
Passenger-wise, is there anybody you wished you could have had next to you that you haven't?
No. I can honestly say no. Honestly. Like I said, I've been really lucky at it. And a couple of little blips where passengers said to me at the start of practice week, even after only a couple of laps, they've gone, I'm struggling here, I don't know if I can do this. And I didn't sort of go, right, get off and get somebody else on, because it's not that easy. But you could in the old days, you could do that. But like, let's say, I had one instance where a passenger just said, mate, I can't do this. And I'd pressured myself up on this. I was going to win. That was that at any cost. And I had to throw a different tactic in. It was really strange, but I was going off at number 1, and my biggest rival at that time was Rob Fisher, who was going off at number 2. And we were as quick as each other. There was nothing in it. Yeah. And I just rode like I was going to the shop till he passed me. And that was on the way to Ballacrane. Yep. So I literally let him pass, but it was raining. It was damp patches. There was leaves everywhere. And I just thought, right, let him pass. Just let him go. Let him have his 10 seconds on me. But I was confident I could take that back, really confident. So I just sat on his tyre. I just sat there and sat there. I don't think he expected that, but his engine blew up at Sulby. Just a shower of crap come out the back of it, smoke and debris, off the track. I knew I'd win that race then. I thought kind of, I feel I put the pressure on him a bit he must have thought, Christ, this is easy. I've just passed him and caught him in no time. Yeah. But I sat right on his tyre and pushed and pushed. That might have freaked passenger out for a little bit, but it was wet. It was controllable. It was slower. And so then I managed to go off, win the race at Canter, and the lad who was struggling at the start of practice week seen himself a win.
So that was the idea, to slow up.
Yeah. I had no other option. If I'd have gone off like a scalded cat, he'd have tapped me and the race would have been over. I had to give him the time, and the conditions helped. Just the conditions.
Wow.
It was probably about 2 mile an hour a lap slower.
That's Stefan Everett's motocross. Win a race the slowest way possible.
Yeah, but which I hated, because at that time I was all or nothing. It had to be faster and faster and faster. And when I crashed at Rencullen that time, I checked myself out of hospital. I shouldn't have done, but I did. It was getting depressing in there. All this howling and wailing going on in Ward 7. So I checked myself out, hobbled down the street, so I've gone for a pint. And next thing, Bob McMillan gives a shout. He said, "You're out." And I said, "Yeah, come and have some food with us. We're at Chinese down in Douglas somewhere." So I went to Chinese. Well, Jim Moody was there. He said, "I want to ask you something." And he was dead aggressive sort of thing. I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Why do you have to go so fast all the time? Why can't you just slow up? You'd have won both races this year easy." I said, I know, but I just kind of got a bit obsessed with going faster and faster and faster. Yeah. It was like I was racing myself. It was crackers. And that was a few years of that. But, yeah, bit me. It bit me.
We're going to get some quick-fire questions. Right, before we do, last question, let's talk about briefly the future of sidecars at the TT. Obviously, the new regs allow a new bike. But after what we saw at this year's TT, do we think there's any risk of it disappearing, the sidecar class? How do you feel?
I ideally hope not.
Yeah.
Because there's reasons for everything. There's always reasons for everything. And, you know, I don't think there was any fault with the circuit in any way or anything like that. I don't think anything like that can be to blame. But, yeah, clearly I think things do have to be smartened up a bit. And but I will tell you this, it's history repeating itself. We've been here before.
Yeah.
This has happened before, and things seem to get fixed and then dwindle down again, and fixed and dwindle down again. But this has been happening forever, this type of thing. And yeah, I've got my views on it, and I'll cut it off there. But all I will say is that, of course, the sidecars have got a future here. We're all wanting to ride here. I'd like to see more riders here. That was the biggest disappointment for me this year, was the fact that I was stood in that holding area with only 39 bikes going out on the grid. And I remember, like, 1985 when I started, I was number 93, last bike away. And it was pretty sickening to see that I've been in holding areas at Alton Park or Cadwell Park with more bikes going out. And that's what I mean by the cost control. And I'm all for what I call Formula Extreme now, because it has gone extreme. It's the dearest form of sidecar racing in the world. And it needs a subclass bolted onto it to help it survive. And that's all I've tried to do.
What about, just on that, and quickly, a one make?
One make?
One chassis, a standard four-cylinder engine, can't do anything to it. Only, you know, a controlled ECU.
If it could be done, it would be absolutely fantastic. Whether it was a twin, whether it was a four-cylinder or a three-cylinder Triumph, anything, as long as it's reliable. And it's
to bring the numbers and to build and to give people a taste, and especially get the youngsters through.
There's surely a way to do that, but it needs backing. It needs investment, you know, to be able to carry out such a task, and then it needs the backing of the riders. And I'm not so sure that would altogether happen. It's definitely something that's been talked about and mentioned, and
has it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
down to the riders might not be interested because they enjoy the engineering part. They enjoy taking
just like
it,
I do. Yeah.
Trying to take it to the next level with how they're building things.
And this is it. And you know, I've never been never professed to be the best rider out there. Never. But I've quite often built the best bike, or the bike that suits me best, which has enabled me to win. And I think that's a craft that needs holding on to. You know. You'll have it in the solos. Why should Paget's Honda be better than the Works Honda? Why should Hickman's BMW be better than the BMW in the next door team? They make it better, don't they? And it's not always the rider that makes it better. And I think that's a craft that should be held on to rather than a one-make series. Although, just for the sake of the sport, if that's the way it went, I would support it. Just to keep it alive, keep it going. But it's the whole world's suffering with increases in cost. Christ, I was just on holiday before last week, and you know, the cost of eating out now. Crackers.
Everything's gone.
Everything has to go up, doesn't it? And
well, we'll definitely see him. We'll definitely see him next year, and we'll definitely see you here next year.
Hopefully.
Right. We need part 4 and part 5 and part 6 to this because I don't. Again, like I said in the intro, his stats didn't scratch the surface, and I barely think this hour and a bit of chatting has scratched the surface. So hopefully we'll get you on again, Dave.
Yeah, no problem.
But it's been an absolute pleasure. But before we go, as ever, sorry, Steve Platers, quick fire questions.
Right, Dave. One answer or the other. No explanations. Okay. Lager or real ale?
Lager.
No messing.
Flipping heck. Football or rugby?
Football.
That surprises me. Time trial or mass start?
Are you allowed to say both?
Nope. One of it.
Okay. Time trial.
Pineapple or never pineapple on a pizza?
Pineapple.
Good lad. 2-stroke or 4-stroke?
2-stroke.
Dan Sale or Patrick Farrance?
You rotten asshole.
One or the other, Dave.
No, I can't do it.
Right, I'll let you off with that. 2, 3 or 4 wheels?
3.
Ooh. Ginger Hall to Ramsey or Bungalow to Cronknamona?
Ginger Hall to Ramsey.
Klaus Klaffenbach or Tim Reeves?
Klaus Klaffenbach.
18th TT win or a World Championship?
World Championship.
Thank you very much.
Dave, as I said before, it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll get you on again for another one.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Hang on, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. There we have it, Steve. Dave Molyneux. I could have just, like I said at the start, I could have sat back and just listened to his stories, and he could have gone on and on and on. I think I said it a few times. We didn't barely scratch the surface with him, really, did we?
No, I've known Molly for quite a few years now, but I didn't realise he was so into the history as well, especially on the sidecar side. He's one of those fellas you just want to go and sit in the pub with all night over a pint, and just chit and chat about the old times and the future as well.
Yeah, and imagine how many stories he's got that he can't tell as well.
Flipping heck, not half.
This has been the Dave Molyneux episode of the TT podcast. If you've enjoyed it, then please, you must have listened to loads of these by now, please hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also leave us a review and a rating. Steve, do you want to hear this latest review from the podcast?
Far away.
5 stars, standard. Love the podcast. Now on my list of favourites. Thank you. Chris has got his work cut out with Steve being the hardest working man in motorcycle sport.
Correct.
It's written by Steve. Brilliant. Unbelievable. Now we have plenty more star-studded names from the world of the TT on the way for you in this series. And here's a little taste of what you can expect from our next guest, Gary Thompson.
There's something about the TT, being upstairs in race control, when it's going well or when it's going to plan, and everything's in place and everything's happening and the sun's shining and the crowds are out there. There is no finer place to be or a finer event to be in charge of, to be honest.
That episode will be out next week, and don't forget that you can get all the latest TT news and features over at iomttracers.com, and be sure to check us out on all the usual socials. We are at TT Racers Official. Thanks for listening. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers, mate.